Welcome to Lit Happens, Unpacking Senior English. I'm Adriel.
And I'm Belle.
We're experienced English teachers dedicated to supporting both new and experienced educators in a world in which we are often time poor, to empower our students to excel in their English studies.
If you're an English teacher, like us, navigating this curriculum, then this podcast is designed with you in mind. And our mission really is to break down the complexities by unpacking English nationally.
Oh, welcome back everyone to episode 31 of Lit Happens. 31 episodes in, and today we are going to be talking about the new syllabus and prescriptions coming out in 2026. Joining us this morning, we have our resident programming queen, Belinda. How are we going, Belle?
You're too kind. You are too kind. I'm going well, thanks. I'm actually a bit excited to talk about the new syllabus.
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting times, and I definitely think our listeners in for a treat listening to the way you sort of unpack the way the new syllabus is going to look like and how they can go about programming in preparation for the new learning year. I think it's definitely going to be an insightful listen, and hopefully we're able to unpack just, I guess, put it the minds at ease as to what is required. So I think that's going to be the big thing for today. And then we'll go through a few series of episodes unpacking this further in more specificity moving forward. But yeah, look, it's a nice cold morning here where we're recording from. And I think a nice way to warm us up this morning will be to start off with our lit or quit question for the morning. Now, this is a simple one, Belle. Lit or quit programming for new prescriptions. Lit or quit? What do you reckon?
I think this depends on whether you actually like programming or not. I think teachers who are just not, programming is not their interest, are just like, again. Look, I am normally a lit when it comes to programming for new prescriptions because I personally enjoy programming. It's always been something when I've worked in faculties that I put my hand up eagerly to do. I just like the way that you could break things down and backward map. So I love programming for new prescriptions. However, I do have to say that I really feel for English teachers across New South Wales with these new prescriptions, especially for the HSC course, because a lot has changed text-wise. Yeah. So I guess gone are the days where you could kind of just not have to reinvent the wheel and you could just do some tweaking. It depends, I guess, on what pattern of study you were doing as well in your schools. But I know most colleagues that I have at a range of schools say majority of what they used to teach is not on the new prescriptions. Yeah. And so, therefore, that's why everyone's panicked, because there's a lot of work to be done and there's not like we get extra time to do it. So I think that was why, Adriel, we suggested let's start looking at the new syllabus and, hopefully save some people time. So I've looked at the documents, the official documents, so that hopefully you don't have to, or just at least if we can give you a bit of an overview today, you only need to go look at specific things as opposed to get your head around all of it. Because there's a lot of different parts to prescriptions, isn't there, Adriel?
Yeah, 100%. And I 100% agree. I am probably more on the quit side of things here because of the very reasons you have stated. I love my teaching. I love getting in the classroom and putting into practice a lot of the stuff that the wonderful people like yourself, programmed for us. And, obviously we build our own units and we adapt as we sort of go along in terms of our pedagogy. But starting from scratch for me, a lot of the times I was just like, that's definitely going to be a hard pass for me on many occasions.
It's totally fair.
Yeah. Inevitably, we find ourselves programming. I mean, I've been finding myself with programming for the new 11 course where I'm currently situated in my new sort of school. And look, it is of lots of benefit because, as you did mention, you can unpack exactly what you want to be teaching, and it gives you a very good insight as to what the goals are at the end of the day. Like, what do we want our students to come out of the teaching term with, respective to whichever text type or module you are teaching. So yeah, look, I'm still going to say a hard quit for me. There are
Yeah.
a lot more qualified, wonderful people like yourself out there that, you know, can do a lot better jobs at creating these units and programs. But I'm definitely there to help out if need be.
Mm. No, definitely. And we all have like our preferences and stuff, but
Yeah,
there are lots of things that other colleagues of mine are fabulous at that I'm like, I'm just not super interested. I'm happy to like teamwork. You can do that and I would do this. And that way we're
yeah,
all happy. And I remember, especially, when you're a new scheme teacher, how daunting
mm,
like
yeah,
syllabus and programming is, because there is a lot of moving pieces and it does
yeah,
get easier with time. But yeah, initially you're like, I have to look at what and read what and break it down.
yeah,
But if you are a new scheme teacher, I would definitely say maybe get a more experienced teacher to help
mm,
mentor you, just to, even
yeah,
if you're not going to be super heavy in the programming, just to help you understand how the syllabus works and all the parts. Because I think it does make you, I think, a bit more confident then in what you're teaching, because you can see how
yeah,
you're meant to be moving forward, sort of a
yeah,
thing. So yeah.
yeah. I think also the big thing with programming is it's just baby steps. So once you do understand, you know, the big general sort of concepts as to what you're looking at, and you've created your scope and sequence, you've done your plans, uh, you know, it's a program is not set in stone. You'll find yourself like adapting it, molding it, adjusting it through the course of the teaching term. And, you know, that's the beauty of English teaching as well.
Yeah.
It's always malleable to new groups of students, and it acts as a base, a foundation,
Yeah,
which you will
absolutely.
add to every
Mhm.
single year. So, yeah, it's something that we look at as like, what are the core things that we need our students to learn according to what NESA is prescribing for us? And then we
Sure.
base then our learning off of that. So, no, thank you for your response there, programming queen. I might have to change your Lit Happens banner here to Bell the programming queen.
Oh, stop
But
it. Stop it, Adriel. You're making me blush.
no, so it definitely will be a good time. But yeah, look, let's continue. Let's get into our episode, Bill, and
Okay,
let's go
let's.
into what we are going to be discussing today. So I guess the first question we're going to be sort of unpacking in regards to the new syllabus, new prescriptions here is, what is the rationale and the aim of this new syllabus?
Okay, so when you're looking at rationale and aim, you'll always find that, within the syllabus document, you can actually find them on curriculum.newsouthwales.edu website. So they've actually got the syllabus all in separate sections on their website. But what you can do is you can select certain things and download your own Word version of it, if you'd like
Mhm.
to have a printed so you can annotate and all of that. So if you're wondering where exactly do I find that's where curriculum.newsouthwales, because I know that looking at official documents for education can be very difficult online. Things are kind of all over the place,
Yeah.
across NESA, across New South Wales Gov. Like, they're just, things are everywhere. So that's where you would find them. Now, if you're looking at the rationale, or what is the whole point of the senior English course, you're looking at a few key things. So the first thing that the rationale mentions is that English is foundational, and it's mandatory, and then it gives a bit of a breakdown as to why it is the one subject that every student must do for their HSC.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
first kind of point, they make about it being compulsory in K to 12 is because it is really central to how students develop their intellect, their social and emotional skills as well. So it's this really nice idea of how, the study of English can enrich students. And
Yeah.
we'll talk a bit more about that. There's also the emphasis in the rationale on how language shapes understanding. And so not only can students see how language shapes their understanding of something they've read, but obviously on that more conceptual, how they understand themselves, how language is power to their
Mhm.
environment, to, what they're doing in their world, to what they see and make sense of their world. So there's that.
Yeah.
The other part of the rationale is engagement with the diverse range of texts. And we will talk about how this diverse range of text looks like in the new syllabus prescriptions. And then there's also that idea of the link between literacy and identity. So
Yep.
how engaging with literature and the act of literacy actually enables students to, shape and understand their identities, their values, their ethics, their perspectives on the world. And so therefore you end with kind of the last part of the rationale, which is this idea that then students are empowered to participate in their world. They become active participants in their learning, and this idea that English learning is like the building blocks of real world life and real world understanding. So that's kind of like the rationale over a few paragraphs. And then lastly, when you're looking at the aim, again, it's got that focus on enabling students to understand and know how to use language effectively so that they can appreciate, reflect on, and enjoy literature, make meaning through a variety of forms, and just having this value of language and literature, and looking at enrichment. So, yeah, that's kind of, I think, the rationale that underpins then the outcomes, and then also the specific units of work and modules and rubrics within the specific prescriptions. So just to quickly reiterate, when you're looking at like the syllabus, that's more specifically your outcomes. And then when you're looking at the prescriptions, that's the, year to year topics and texts that are being studied, to help represent that
It's
rubric.
your content, isn't it? Your content.
That's it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I 100% agree, and I think it's quite a good rationale. And I mean, it's a question that will often get asked by students. It's like, oh, well, why do we have to do this X, Y, Z? And we've sort of had a few of these discussions recently as to this lack of critical engagement, creativity that we're seeing, with these sorts of elements in our society at the moment. So I think it's a nice space and scope for us to actually be creative in terms of the way we teach these units, like encouraging those skills as based by the syllabus outcomes. I think it's super duper important for us as teachers to really foster this, because I don't know about yourself, but like for me, you're starting to see more and more students becoming more and more mechanical in the way that they're approaching English, which is part and parcel of the society in which we live in. So hopefully the aims and the rationale for this new syllabus is to hopefully foster a bit of that critical, imaginative, interpretive sort of engagement with text, to really, really hone in on that idea of shaping voice, but also understanding the world in which the students live through literary value. I think that's quite significant there with the English rationale. So thank you for unpacking that. That was very, very good. And I'm sure we'll do a little bit of a video on where students can, where teachers can find these documents that we were alluding to as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So people can sort of look at that as well. But yeah, let's move on to our second question now for today. And it's to do with the course structure. Now, we know over the course of our years of teaching that the course structure is something that is dictated by NESA. So what are the course structures and scope and sequences for year 11 and 12? And, how would teachers look to implement this over the course of the next year and a bit, especially in preparation for the 2026 sort of rollout of the course?
As you said, it is very much dictated by NESA. And so there are some very specific guidelines that, schools do need to be following. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, I think, what system you're in for teaching, but at the end of the day, it does have to be fair for everybody. And that's why NESA has these, rules and qualifiers, so that no matter where a student is, they're entering this level playing field. Now, I know reality is it might not always be the case. And so I think the new prescriptions and the new syllabus, I think, has made some changes to adjust that as well, to make it a little bit more streamlined and easier. But at the end of the day, it is something that we do need to follow. And I'm going to go through just very briefly some of the requirements. So I will say, though, that when you're looking at this syllabus, of this new syllabus, it does depend as well on what course the students are doing. So there are some nuances between the standard, the EALD, the advanced, and the studies. So I mean, I will give some suggestions later on that too, but just bearing in mind, it's not really a one for all kind of as it used to be. There are some differences. So as you said, this year we're in our planning phase because NESA has determined that pretty much 2026 term 1, year 11 of that year will be starting this new syllabus. So your year 12s for that year will be finishing off the current HSC, but your year 11s are starting the new syllabus with the new rules and prescriptions, because then following that, in 2027, they will be sitting that first new HSC paper for that new syllabus and prescription. Yeah, so when teachers are, I know all the faculties around it in planning phase right now, so you do have to bear in mind that NESA does have some rules around this. So in year 11, there are no prescribed texts. There are prescribed modules, and we'll talk about that shortly. But in terms of what text you are to do, there's no set rule here other than making sure that they're quality literature. You should have a bit of an Australian text somewhere within your course. Also having an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander text in there as well. And they're looking for a bit of variety. So perhaps some diversity, whether that's cultural or gender, depends on your school and demographic. And also making sure you've got a range of text types. So you've got something that's prose, you've got poetry, perhaps drama or nonfiction or film, and making sure that you integrate all the modes, which are reading, writing, listening, speaking, viewing, and representing. The only core caveat in year 11 is you must begin with reading to write. That's kind of, that functions as the common module. And the way that sometimes I like to just think about reading to write is it's kind of like text and human experience and module C all in one. So in that regard, when you're looking at reading to write, think about it in that way. So how can you introduce unseen texts? How can you introduce a core concept or thematic concern? And also how might you look at different responding tools in terms of critical, creative, discursive? Because when you're doing, your year 11 is really meant to be the preparation for year 12. So there aren't really specific texts, but there are some things that you have to do there. Now, when they're in term 4 of 2026, that first year 11 group, they'll be starting the new HSC course for next year. So if you're feeling a little bit stressed, I get it, because we are term 3 now and in the middle of trials. Exactly. So I think a lot of schools now in term 3 and term 4 will be getting into the nitty-gritty of their programming. I know that a lot of schools have been planning and looking and overviewing. This is going to be a bit of a busy year, and next year as well, to make sure that the year 11 and the year 12 stuff all kind of aligns there. Sorry, you go.
No. I think definitely you've unpacked quite a bit there in terms of the course structure there. And I love the way that you sort of looked at, 11 and 12. I think the big thing is we are going to be busy as teachers. So it's just how we sort of deal with it. Unfortunately or fortunately, the way you sort of look at it. You can look at it as something as another chore, or you could look at it as an opportunity to really put your blueprint on what you want to be teaching for the next few years.
I think so.
And that I think that might be like a nice way in which we then move into the structuring of this. And look, this is coming from a person that, initially said I would definitely quit the programming part of things right at the beginning. But look, you have to look at some of the benefits in order to get your way through it. Perspective is very, very important. But look, it will be very, very busy. And what was the first year, Bill, if you could just correct us, like when will they be sitting the first HSC exam under this new syllabus?
That'll be 2027.
So 2027, you've still got a year and a bit to prep for that in terms of the HSC course. But look, it's a big learning curve. I think that's a big thing.
It is. It is. And the biggest thing I think... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
I was just going to say, I think you're making a great point. The biggest thing is to really think about what have you got to do in year 12 and then backward map. So, regardless of whether you're doing standard or advanced, you do have to do like one prose, one poetry, one drama, non-fiction. Advanced obviously always has the caveat that one of them has to be Shakespeare. And then, in advance, you will have that double up because you've got 4 prescribed texts. But with the standard, you've got the 3. So I think one of the big hallmarks as well of the new syllabus is it seems like there isn't really a prescribed text list per se for Module C, which I think is probably nice and maybe alleviates some of the pressure, because you're not sort of being forced to use that although it's a great list. It just, I think, allows teachers to realize, I can actually draw on a lot of other good short texts to support maybe not only Module C, but understanding of a common module as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we've sort of been moving towards that anyway with our Mod C craft of writing in the last few years anyway, where you look at the way that they structure a lot of the HSC questions, and it's, looking at prescribed text through the course of the year, or 2 that were required of study in the Mod C rubric. So it's definitely something that gives you a bit more scope to look at texts that you may enjoy as you move forward, as long as the literary value is there. And I think that's important. But no, thank you for unpacking that, Bill. Let's move on to our next question here. So let's have a look at the outcomes and a bit more sort of a deep dive into some of these outcomes. What are the outcomes expected for students in year 11 and 12 over the course of these next few years?
Yeah, so there are 6 outcomes now in the new syllabus, and they're actually, I think, a lot more straightforward than perhaps the previous outcomes were. I mean, I have to say, I know I did some programming for the junior English syllabus, and I really liked that. I really like the outcomes there because they're arranged kind of according to textual concept. So that works really cool. But this one, you've got 6 main outcomes. They are very similar across the different English courses, but there are nuances, like the verbs change depending on which course you're sitting in, the HSC verbs. So when you're looking at these 6 points, the first kind of outcome is more focused on language for analyzing language form and structure. And then when you're looking at outcome 2, it's more about the relationship between and amongst texts. So, teachers who've been teaching English for a while, what I'm saying here, it's not new language. It's definitely, language in terms that we see in the old outcomes. But I think it's just the way that they're arranged here is slightly different. That's all. Then you've got like your third outcome, which is more focused on context and values, influencing composition and response. You've got outcome 4, which is about students composing texts using language forms and features, and then composing critical and creative texts in outcome 5, and outcome 6, evaluating compositional processes. So if you look at it, there's like 3 outcomes that are a little bit more content and understanding based, and then 3 outcomes that are a bit more skill and application based. Which I think is a nice way that it's kind of been simplified.
Yeah, I was going to say that it feels like, I know, like with my programming that I've been doing over the last, I guess for our professional development, the beginning of this term, I was looking at it again. I'm like, actually, it is very simple now. Like they sort of want us to just focus on some of these core sort of things that we want students to have as they leave, obviously, the learning that is to be had in whatever course or module that we're looking at. So it is simplified, and you probably see that translated to the content points as well. I found that when I was looking at the content points.
It's a bit different, isn't it? Because if you're looking at the syllabus, the content points, again, are separated between understanding and responding. But I think what's interesting with this new syllabus is they're actually also, they're separated between the modules as well. Which I think is good because it gives a bit more direct focus for anybody that's programming.
I actually love that because it's like a lot of the times when we were programming before for English, it's like, oh, well, what if we take this route, and what if another school takes that route? So it's giving us a little bit more direction, which I think is definitely very important and we are grateful of Nessa for giving us this further direction. But yeah, look,
Really
it's I love the fact that you've got it broken down into those specific parts of understand, respond, and again, it's quite simple. Like there aren't too many content points per module, so you
No.
really can,
Yeah.
you really can unpack your learning in terms of this is what they really want. So I actually
Yes.
tripped out about this a little bit when I started my programming part
Yeah.
because I was like,
Yeah.
was so used to having
This is
such
so
an
different.
enormous
Yes.
scope,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
but now it's like directed. So you can see why we are moving towards this in regards to like our society and then everything going on in the world of teaching. But it is actually quite beneficial for us and it makes programming a little bit easier. We just have to get our heads around it. And I mean, some of us are going to be like English history teachers. Some of us come from that background.
Yeah.
And if you've got like that history background, it is very like, this is your content point. This is what we're going to be addressing in a
Yeah.
subject. Now, we still aren't that explicit, but we are moving towards that a little bit with
Yeah.
this new syllabus. Yeah.
You're right. I think it's really helpful. Like, even if I can just offer like an example. So,
Mm.
if you're looking at, let's say, the reading to write, the first unit reading to write in the standard course. So, in the actual syllabus for English standard, you'll like it'll have all your those 6 outcomes in a table, and then you'll kind of scroll down to the next page, and it will start breaking them down according to
Yeah.
each topic or each module. So, with reading to write standard, your first outcome is about composers using language. And then you'll actually see on the document that I think it's the first dot point in the understand has the aesthetic qualities of quality text and the power of language to express ideas and experiences. And then the first dot point for respond is compose persuasive, discursive, imaginative, and reflective text that experiment with language features and emerging textual forms. So I think even though you said it's not as explicit as like a history, it does, these dot points do give a lot more direction than I think perhaps they did in the past, Adriel. And the fact that they've kind of organized them, like you'll see that when you then move into the second topic for year 11, which is either contemporary possibilities or narratives that shape our world, you'll notice that the content points are a little bit more surrounding that second outcome on context and values and ideas. So yeah, I think it's helped that they've kind of like blocked them as these are more for this topic and these are, I think you're right. It gives a bit more direction, which hopefully saves everyone a lot of time.
No, 100%. And it's just about wrapping our head around that idea because we're not used to it. So it's lovely that you've just unpacked that and actually pointed that out for our listeners because it can be daunting. It's like, oh, what? I'm so used to this and now it's like becoming more prescriptive. This is constraining, but no, it's actually just beneficial for us. I think it's just this is what that's streamlining. This is what we want our teachers to be teaching and our students to be learning. And
it's
definitely
also
does help, I think.
It does. And it's also nice because if you look at the outcomes from the year 11 into the year 12, you'll see that they've added those more higher order HSC verbs. So you can see that progression. So like with the standard course, it goes from like analyze and, explain to that critically analyze and justify. And in the advanced course, it goes into the critically analyzes and evaluates. So you can see how there's like that building of the skills across the 2 years, which is what it is. Year 11 is meant to be solidifying those skills so that hopefully when we're in the year 12 course, students have what they need and they're just working on their own independent skills and stuff.
Yeah, I love that. It's that stepping stone, isn't it? Anyway, well, let's look at our stepping stone then into our next question here, which is going to be on our assessment structure. Now, this is a big one. Like, how are we going to be structuring our assessment tasks in regards to the 2026 syllabus? What are some things that you can probably enlighten our viewers with as to how our assessment is structured under the 2026 assessment syllabus?
Yeah, so when you're looking at it across year 11 and 12, I think this is quite typical even from previous outcomes where there's this like 50% time spent on content and 50% on skills. So that split is kind of always there. Year 11 is pretty relaxed in terms of the requirements. So 3 assessment tasks. So that means 1 per term, because obviously you've got reading to write in term 1, your module A in term 2, and your module B in term 3. So 3 assessment tasks. There's only 2 real kind of stipulations here. It says 3 assessment tasks, including a formal written examination, which pretty much for most schools is like a yearly exam. Yep. And then there's a stipulation in how much you can weigh the task. So it says a weighting for any individual task of between 20% and 40%. So obviously, you know, what you should be thinking about is, well, in those 3 terms, that final grade has to be out of 100. So then you would backward map with what are your assessments and what will you weight them. So, you know, a very typical one would be like 40, 30, 30, something like that, you know. Or you might have like a 25 here. Like it's the range is there, but noting that it's between 20 and 40%. The interesting thing I think in this new prescription is there doesn't really seem to be a stipulation for a multimodal assessment, which I think a lot of people are like, thank you.
Yes.
Look, I think multimodal had its merits, but definitely from a programming perspective, yeah, it did take a lot of time working out where to put it, how to make it purposeful. I will say, though, I did note in the prescriptions for standard that in contemporary possibilities, there is a little point in there that says there has to be some sort of multimodal or film text within that module. So not in the assessment, but within the module. But I think it's one nice thing, because I think that there was a lot of maybe inequity around whether all schools were actually assessing with multimodal. So I think just removing it maybe gives everybody a bit more breathing room now, you know?
Yeah. And then look, like you said, it's got its merits, I guess, in our world which we live. But I think the multimodal part of it was actually taken away from some of the written components for or the writing merit for students. And I think the new syllabus is definitely emphasizing a little bit more of the written work these days. So I think it's beneficial.
And there's no reason why, I guess. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I love that.
I was just saying, like, I guess there's no reason why you couldn't still do a multimodal task if you want, if you think it's really beneficial, if you think it works really well. I think the difference is we're not all forced to do it now, which was probably the problematic part.
No, exactly. And a lot of the times, like with those multimodal tasks, like that you mentioned, this idea of accessibility, you know, we all understand that we come from a diverse range of teaching environments where students may not necessarily have access to a lot of the tools needed for, you know, some of those higher order multimodal tasks. And I think this sort of allows us to really differentiate for our students across the varied range of students that we will get in our teaching courses. So definitely, and I love that you mentioned this. Like, I mean, a typical assessment outline for us, which is what we were used to, I would put a lot of weighting on the exam or the examination, like 40% there. And then, you know, your first 2 assessment tasks would be your 30/30s to get to your 60. That was like a typical easy breakdown for those that are wondering how to do it. If you don't want to do the maths, I would generally do it like that. But it's a nice way of sort of looking at it. But yeah, look, different schools will have different types of assessment tasks moving forward. But I think the big thing is when we're looking at assessment structure, you know, it must align with the NESA requirements, and that's probably the big thing that we're looking at.
Yeah. So when we're then looking at assessment now for the HSC, so this one you have 4 assessment tasks, and there are a few more, a couple of specific requirements here. So one is that you have to have a task assessing the craft of writing with a weighting of 20 to 30%. So you've got that range to work with. And then obviously what that weighs depends on what your other assessments are and what weighting you're giving. And so I think in the previous prescriptions, you did have to assess craft of writing, but I can't remember whether it was like 20% or 30%. It was like a one or the other, whereas this gives you a bit of a range. Yeah. This one gives you a bit more scope, which I think works both ways. Like one, oh, how nice I get to pick, But on this, at the same token, I'm sure that there are a lot of, head teachers and English teachers out there going, well, I have to really then be careful about what weighting I give to what topic, because it could influence the in-school result. And so, yeah, I think that is something to consider, because obviously the other stipulation is a written examination. And then a weighting of individual tasks of between 10 to 40%. So again, teachers might be thinking, oh God, I have to be very careful about what task gets more weighting or less. I think you probably could be a bit strategic maybe and say to yourself, if you've got a task or a text that tends to do better than others, maybe you might try and make that task worth a little bit more, and maybe have your difficult task worth a bit less. I don't know, like this is the thing. On one hand, we have a lot more freedom now in the year 12 in school-based assessment. However, I think you do have to give it a lot of thought, because it potentially could influence, things like ranking and stuff like that. What do you think, Adriel?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When we're looking at rankings, like, we don't neglect that for the HSC, and you do have to be very careful the way you do actually do your weightings. I'm a bit of an old school sort of thinker, where you want to model everything based off of what they're going to be having their major assessment on. But then the flip side of the coin then is, well, you're disadvantaging students that, may not necessarily be good at examination conditions. In saying that, though, I still think that there is a little bit of a bias, or innate bias towards, performing well in the examinations. And sometimes if we misconstrue the true strength of students in terms of how they perform in the exams, when we have big weightings and assessments that aren't necessarily those exam condition type assessment tasks, that can actually affect your rankings and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, that's probably like talk that we might have for like another day, but I think it's something to really consider.
Absolutely. Because I think if you're looking at this new the new syllabus requirements, I feel like the previous one was worded a bit more like strictly, like it was like only one formal exam, only one of this. And so the language in this is a lot softer, which look, makes me think that perhaps then it's a case of your school, you can make a decision for your students. But I would just say to everyone, just bear in mind that, unfortunately, it when it comes to the final exam, you can't adjust that. So definitely be strategic for your schools, but also consider it holistically, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a great unpacking of sort of what the assessment structure does look like. And you've done our listeners a very good sort of insight, or given an insight there.
If I could just add, one more point that I almost forgot. The assessment criteria is a little bit different if you're doing the EALD course or the studies course. There are different requirements. So that's why I said also at the start of this episode, just make sure that you're looking specifically at the course that you're doing, you're teaching, so you don't get caught out, because they're not all this, it's not all streamlined. There are those nuances. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's very good that you pointed that out, and I'm sure we'll unpack that a little bit further in our coming episodes as well for our respective listeners. But no, thank you for that, Belle. That was fantastic. Let's jump now to our final question we'll jump to our final question for today's episode, and it's: how can teachers plan and sequence their teaching to align with the new syllabus? So what are some of those little tips that you might be able to give us? Obviously, this is another question that we could spend 3-4 hours talking about, but what are some of your top tips in relation to this?
I think sticking to the timeline as much as you can is my first tip, because nobody wants to be coming to the end of the year and then panicking, like, what are we doing? What are we teaching? So I think giving yourselves timelines, even within your faculty, and I don't even mean necessarily that everything needs to be finished, because I'm not sure that that's entirely possible. But I think
not.
No, it's not, isn't it? And it's never ending, this stuff. Like you said before, you could go back and reprogram. But I think if you have that timeline, probably by this point in the year, you need to have a decision made on what year 12 text you're teaching, because that's going to influence what you're doing in year 11 at the start of next year. And therefore, that might give you term 4 to start off with what's the first topic, reading to write, and do we need to rewrite or redo it in a way that aligns better now with what we are going to do in year 12 with these new prescriptions. So first thing is implementing different timelines or goals or achievement things, and then hitting that off as you go. I think another major thing always is to have a scope and sequence plan that maps your outcomes, you know, with the content points, which we know now are more specific, so it's even easier than it used to be, but maps them out as well with your modules, where you're going to teach them in the year. I know that doesn't count for year 11, but it does for year 12. And also what weighting and assessment tasks you're going to have. So the big thing when you're programming, you have to backward map and plan it like this before you can get into the specific units of work and teaching and learning sequences. So when I say scope and sequence, that's like a 1 to 2 page document or table that gives you a rough overview of what is being taught when, where you're teaching it, and then what you're assessing. And so I think that's really important too, is to decide on the assessment and the weighting before you start writing out your units, because it will then guide what goes in your teaching and learning sequences. That's why we call that, you know, backward mapping. If you say to yourself, okay, so, you know, the year 12 are definitely going to be doing kind of an unseen and then a creative response, I don't know, for their common module task, then you might be saying to yourself, where do I replicate that in year 11? Is it in the yearly exam? Is it in the first term reading to write, where maybe they've got to do an unseen and create an imaginative and reflection? Like, you've got to kind of work out where, so you can put it in year 11 as practice for year 12. And then that will determine what skills you're teaching within that, what textual concepts you're teaching within that. Although there are some links to textual concepts within the content points too. But if you're aligning it this way, then you break it down further, and what specific teaching and learning activities will we be doing to build that skill and enable students to succeed in that assessment task. That's probably another tip. Another one that you like that one? Yeah. Cool. I think so. Another one that is good too is I think it's good to kind of designate a bit of an expert. I mean, none of us are experts, like we're always learning and evolving, but maybe an experienced teacher to coordinate each different course, because as I said, there are nuances and you don't want to get caught up. So if you could have 1 to 2 teachers as like they're focusing on the advanced prescriptions, outcomes, and the programming, then you've got your standard experts, your studies experts, because I think that lightens the load a bit if everyone's got a specific focus. And it doesn't necessarily mean, I think, that you have to be super experienced. I know back in the day, I was partnered up with mentor teachers, and so they kind of upskilled me as I went. So you definitely, and I think there are probably a lot of schools now where we've got a bigger mix of experience levels, and a lot of new scheme teachers being forced straight up to get into the senior course, which can be daunting. So maybe if you were to pair them up, they could be kind of learning and creating at the same time. I think that would be good, because then each person knows what they're focused on. And then within that, you can, you know, delegate, you're going to do this unit or you're going to do that unit. But I think having a bit of a game plan internally, it will just stop people feeling frazzled and like, what are we doing? Who's doing this? You know what I mean? I think it's just nice cohesion, I think. Like, you're working together ultimately. Like, you might be creating a unit that you're not necessarily going to be able to teach that year, but we do what we can with what we have. So, you know, you might need to think about that in terms of your own faculty.
No, I love that. And I think, like, if you're considering like those expert sort of coordinators, it's more and more prevalent, as you said, in our current teaching climate, that we are going to have lots and lots of teachers that are coming in nice and fresh, and, you know, there's no issues being fresh. I still feel like I'm fresh whenever I have to do programming and, scope and sequencing and all of these terms that universities have sort of spoken about, and they expect like,
Yeah.
full on detailed X, Y, and Z things that you spent 4 weeks trying to develop. It's not like that. Like you'll probably in reality get maybe, if you're lucky, a day or two
Yeah.
to spend a bit of time programming, and then you sort of fit it into your normal jam-packed days. So
Yeah.
I think the idea of having like a coordinator or someone that you will work with as a mentor, I think that's so invaluable.
Mm. Yeah.
Valuable, I would say, because
Yeah.
it's just an experience that you'll have most of your learning with. I know for us, for example, like we had one of our lovely gentlemen teachers who was so knowledgeable when it came to what should be taught in the classroom, and has a vast range of experiences. But if you were to ask him to put together a program on a computer, uh, that's where the struggle would probably start. And I know you've sat with this individual and this mentor of ours, and definitely put together a lot of his thoughts onto the page. So these are different ways in which we can encourage our new scheme teachers to learn. But look, before we finish here, Bill,
Mm-hmm.
what is your order? What would you sort of look at
Yeah.
in terms of sequencing this?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good thing. If we just kind of finish with some last general pointers, obviously
Mm,
Adriel and I would love to do specific episodes on specific courses. So keep your ear out for that. But in general, um, well, you need to backward map not just what works for your class, but also according to those NESA regulations. So think about what your text selections are and what texts you can and skills you can mimic in year 11. So the things that my order is usually something like backward mapping or matching your year 12 and year 11 texts according to text
mm,
type. So one way you can do it is
mm,
choosing things in year 11 that work with the text types that you're going to do. So if you can do a straight alignment, like let's say in module B, I'm doing prose. So I'm going to try and do prose in module B for year 11. So one way is to do
mm,
it that way, because you can do all the text type specificities in year 11 and therefore not have to focus too much on it in year 12. And it's an easy way to go, what did we remember what we did in year 11? Okay, same kind of thing, but just a new novel or a new poetry or whatever. So you can match according
yeah.
to text types. Another thing that you can do is more so match according to modules, which to be fair, year 11 is kind of set up this way anyway.
Yeah.
So, if you're obviously common module in year 12, common module in B, and so you might not be too worried about matching text types here. You're just focusing on knowing what skills you're going to teach in that year 12 or what
Mm,
specific concepts or ideas you might be teaching, and then making sure you're representing that in year 11. So like
yeah.
if you know that your module B in year 12 is something you're going to look at postmodern elements, for example, well, then you would need to find somewhere to do that in year 11, or at least introduce it somewhere in year 11 so
Yeah.
that you've got that continuity as you move forward. You can do that as well with concerns or big ideas across texts,
Mm,
or even major contexts at play. So obviously in advance, you have to do Shakespeare, that's a given.
yeah.
But if you're doing a text that has a very specific context, so it might be, let's say, like a World War II context or something like that, then you might consider what is something I can do in year 11 to introduce that context when I've got some more time and not have to stress so much in year 12. And then the other thing as well is matching according to what the assessments will be in year 12, because hopefully you've scope and sequenced that already. And therefore, those skills, and then you work out where you're going to do it. So the big thing is step one, you need to choose what you're doing in year 12
Yeah.
so that you
Yeah.
can backward map into year 11. Because if those two things don't align, you've got a bit of a missed opportunity, I think. That doesn't mean that we can't make it work. We are English teachers, we can make literally anything work. But
Mm,
if you're trying to be really thoughtful, you need to go, well, what am I doing based on what NESA allows me? How much is that worth? And then, okay, where do I align that in year 11? There's also obviously considerations for like student demographic and interest. That's a big one. I mean,
Yeah.
we can pick our most favorite combination in year 12, and that doesn't mean that our students will connect. I will say, though, that, students do get excited when you're excited. So there is that aspect. But if you know you have a certain demographic that might struggle or not align, or it just might be too tension filled, then that might actually influence what you pick. Look, funding for the new text could be quite problematic. There are a lot of new texts and a lot of schools that at the moment don't have a lot of money and have had funding reduced. So you need to, so that might actually, unfortunately, influence. You might say to yourself, I can't really afford to buy new text. So I just need to pick things that I either already have or are accessible, or I can borrow from another school. And so funding in terms of having programming days might also be difficult depending on what schools you're at. I know I've been hearing a lot of schools in areas like creating kind of teams and swapping resources and programs. And that's really cool, and that will lighten the load. But again, each school will have its own unique elements to it. And so you probably still will have to reshape a little bit, but hopefully you're not reinventing the wheel here. You're just revamping kind of older units. But like ultimately, my order, and you need to look at, what are your assessment tasks and ranges and pick your combination. So you need to know what your HSC prescribed texts are to work back to year 11. You need to then fit the relevant outcomes and content from year 12 back to year 11. Then after that, you would create a bit of a teaching, learning and sequence and backward map from the assessment. And then you might delve deeper, use the content and skills in the assessment to create a specific unit of work for that topic.
Yeah, I love that. You've unpacked that very, very well. And I think one of the cool things that I think you sort of touched on this as well, albeit we've got a whole set of new texts and, obviously different sort of modules, they still align with a lot of what we have taught before. So, I mean, looking at some of your old programs and really looking at the skills will align with a lot of the content points, the responding and the composing points that we've already sort of worked on in the course of our years teaching the HSC. So you don't need to start from scratch, as much as it may seem like that at times. And we have this opportunity to maybe just put a clean blank slate. The reality is the time available to actually do that type of programming is not possible, unless you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Which some of you probably
You
already
need to
are
sleep.
like that, exactly right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
look, don't reinvent the wheel. I think that's something that's very, very important as well. Swap, share, talk with your colleagues. Don't think you're alone in this. And I think that's probably some of the most significant piece of advice that we can give you. A lot of the times like both you and I, we've been very open with our sharing of resources, and we've been taught this, to share and bestow knowledge onto other people, because at the end of the day, we're not teaching to, look, I'm going to probably be a little bit controversial here, but I'm just going to say it. We're not teaching to sort of pad our stats and move up the rankings in terms of our career, as much as that's nice and all. The main reason that we are teaching is so that we can help our students best achieve whatever their personal best is. And I think if we throw away that first sort of attitude there, and we really talk with our colleagues, we share our thoughts and our ideas with people around the education sort of space, I think that will be so beneficial for all of our students, in an already very demanding environment. I think, why create a little bit of tension when we can all be there to help each other out. So anyway, I do apologize if I've ruffled a few feathers with that, but I unapologetically say that, I think, in a way.
Yeah. No, I agree
well.
with you completely. So agree.
No, so it's definitely something. But Belle, thank you so much for today. You have definitely
pleasure.
shown why you have been bestowed that title of programming queen.
You've been bestowed by yourself.
Yeah, exactly right.
Love it. I just
But no,
hope that was a nice breakdown. Overall, what should you be expecting? And look, a lot of you have probably already started looking at this, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to just have a summation, I think, to just go back and refresh your memory.
Yeah, that's right. And look, we'll be, like we've been saying through the episode, popping up a few more things in terms of more specifics in regards to how we implement this new syllabus and text types and all that sort of stuff. It's all in the works,
Yeah.
but please be sure to just keep in contact with us. Let us know what you guys are struggling with. And we'll be, sure to address that in our episodes or maybe some videos and shorts that we do have coming up as well. But all in all, Belle, thank you once again for your wonderful
Yeah,
knowledge
pleasure.
today. And it is
So
definitely something that I'm going to be using in my own programming time as well, even though I hate it.
All right.
Hate's a strong word, but look, it is not my first choice in terms of what I got into teaching with, but it is definitely
It's
one of those
totally fair.
essential things that we do need to do. But yeah, once again,
Yeah.
thank you so much for what you have
Pleasure.
bestowed on us. And look, guys, that brings us to the end of episode 31 here. Be sure to like and subscribe, share the podcast. I love this. I've been having a few of my mates actually reach out, and it's lovely because they've sort of been saying, "Oh, look, we've got a few teacher friends, and they've been listening here or there. I've been popping up onto our socials. Do as much as that as possible, even if you are just interested in learning English, maybe becoming an English teacher, or just want to support us. Just like, subscribe, share. It does help us out, and we are sure to, continue to add things as we do go along this journey. But thank you once again, Belle, and we will
Thank
be
you.
speaking to our listeners next week. Thanks, guys.